very clear we're multiple years away from meaningful changes to pretty much all of their properties? Maybe. I guess it depends upon what you define as meaningful changes. I would define meaningful changes as enough changes to something, one of their properties, that makes me want to come back and play the game continually. We could talk about D4 if you want, but one such example outside of D4 to try to give a property that I'm not currently playing that I do want to come back and play would be the WoW Classic change, where it's WoW Vanilla with Season of the Discovery, which is going to allow different types of classes to have different types of properties associated with them, like, Tank Warlock is one example they used, or Mage Healer. So for me, that gives me a wanting to go back and play the game. Now, you could argue that that's not significant change to the whole large scale of WoW itself, and maybe we would agree about that, but on the end result of that would be that I would go back and play World of Warcraft. So for me, that's what I would define it as, but I guess it depends upon what you define it as. Here responds saying, I just feel like on a macro level, Blizzard has been a slow developer. With all changes to their studio structure, Microsoft purchase, they will absolutely have layoffs and slow them down even more. I mean, maybe. I don't know if necessarily Microsoft is suddenly going to make them slow down more. I also have heard arguments on both sides of things where people say because there's too many people in the company that they don't have the ability to move quickly. I mean, we can see this argument with some of the games, like smaller indie companies can make changes very quickly. PoE grinds out changes fairly fast, and they get praised for it having a smaller team, whereas Blizzard's got 9,000 employees, and how many of them work on Diablo 4? So I'm not sure that necessarily, even with your own argument, let's say that it is true, that having less people necessarily means that they're going to be moving slower, because I've seen arguments on both sides of that. I've seen arguments that it's having more people makes them slower and having less people makes them slower. So I think the reality of what it is you need people that are passionate about the game, that know how to make the game within a company making games. And if you have that, the end result is probably going to be people are playing your game. I think that's what really it boils down to what matters. Now, we can argue about the marketing, the promotion, the acquisition from corporations, but really at the end of the day, you need someone who loves games, loves the game they're playing and making at the same time, and can make a game and knows what the people want at the end of the day for their game. I think that's really the bread and butter of it, and everything else around it matters to a certain extent, but without that core, I'm not sure anything really works. And so when I see people like, Chris that came up on the stage there talking about their World of Warcraft, and I think, now there's a guy who is authentic in his, love for WoW. He's one of the OGs over there at WoW, right? So you get guys like that behind the scenes, I think people will be okay. Now, what that means in terms of, a merger, acquisition, etc., I don't know, man. It's all guesswork for any of us at this point. But to your original point about, do they have big enough changes, to actually fundamentally adjust any of their properties? I think it might adjust people wanting to play their properties. I'm not sure if they're so big and so large scale at this point that changing everything about the game, that's significantly larger of a deal now than it used to be when they were a smaller company. The response is, don't disagree at all. Proof will be in the pudding. I'm just one of those guys who's churned out of every single Blizzard property. I'm eagerly awaiting for a season to come back and just haven't seen that from BlizzCon. And considering that this is their platform to hype people to come back, it didn't hit for me. Well, you're not wrong to feel that way, but the people that also are excited by it aren't wrong to feel that way either. I think what it depends upon is what is it that originally made you excited by those properties, and if they touched on those notes to re-excite that in you. Like, for me, Diablo is a game that I want to be able to grind and feel like there's enough builds and different play styles so that everything is not immediately cookie cutter. So when I see that, hey, we're adding the Malignant Rings in, so now, okay, that's definitely going to shake things up a little bit. Or we saw like the Dolan Stone, that's the build I'm currently running at the moment, where it actually fundamentally changes the way the build works. That is a reason for me to want to play the game. When I see things like leaderboards, that's not a reason for me to want to play the game, but it is a reason for somebody else who wants to play a game. I'm not a competitive person. I don't care about being competitive. I like to play games blind for the most part, both because I think it's more entertaining on content, as well as it helps me not ruin the game before I play it. But for somebody else, they want to min-max from day one. So it really depends upon the type of person you are. And each of these games are large enough that there's going to be huge different sections of types of players, and the games will appeal to all of these types of players. And as time goes on and they expand upon the game, they might lose some of those certain, subsections of the community that maybe it's no longer that type of game for those types of people, and they might focus and double down on the larger section or something. And I think that's would be perfectly reasonable for you to feel that way. Haven't played Diablo since the second one. I got 4 and I'm enjoying it. I think if as you age, here was my take on Diablo 4. I think it still rings true, which is that Diablo 4 was reaching back to the players that were no longer able to keep up with the way they used to play, but still want to play the games that they used to play. I think that's kind of what Diablo 4 is. I think it's an easier, accessible game. So the people that still play like they used to don't like Diablo like they used to, because the game is simplified. It's basically dumbed down a little bit at the moment. Now, it's becoming more complicated as they're adding more stuff in, admittedly, because they realize they kind of need to, as the more core audience really wants that. But they're trying to reach back to some of the people that basically don't play anymore, that want to be able to come back and still experience the game at an easier level. So, they baby it up a little bit. And I get that argument. They casual it up and try to make it a little bit more accessible for people that don't play as many hours. They reach out to the console audience as well, which there's plenty of console people that are still hardcore gamers that play quite a bunch of hours. But there's also a lot more console players that play less hours than, in my opinion, PC gamers that play less hours. If you have a $5,000 PC setup with a $2,000 monitor, you're much more likely to be the type of person that plays much more commonly. Whereas Diablo 4 is a game that you can own with a $240 Xbox S, and you buy the game and then you're done with no subscription. So it's a much easier barrier to entry to get those people the type of play. And so that makes sense to me from a marketing and audience perspective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to appeal to everybody, or that you're wrong in your opinion for being bored of some of these properties. That's a very valid way to feel. What seems a bit weird for me with Blizzcon is that most of their games are too casual for people who go to conventions. Is it like WoW only people or something? I think that casual and passionate aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. I think you could be a casual player who plays a couple hours a day, and to be honest, that's a lot of hours in a week. And at that point, still have a lot of raw passion for gaming in general. You also might be the type of person that enjoys conventions, that just want to go to conventions and see what's announced about the games you want. You could have a lot of copium, whatever you want to call it, around some of these games as well. So a couple hours a day isn't casual, a couple hours a week is fair enough. We could argue the borderline of what defines a casual all day if you want. In my opinion, compared to hardcore gamers who are playing 5 hours a day, 2 hours is a lot less. But you're right, 2 hours a day is probably a lot for a casual player. I would probably end up agreeing with that. I think maybe an hour a day would probably be more reasonable. But I think there's a lot of people that log into a game every day, but they can't play it as long as they want, because they get into the game, they start playing, and then their kid needs some help with something. And then they're like, okay, well, I guess I'm done for the day, but they got their one level in. And I would consider that a casual player, not by choice, but by force. By external force. Just for me personally, I'd like to see the bigger swings from Blizzard than large companies in general. I understand moving slowly and calculating smaller nerfs buffs over a month, but if I'm on stage at BlizzCon pimping my game, I want to show up and say, here's our new class Templar, show some badass gameplay, and also we are simplifying our gear and streamlining the strat variety. Okay, fair enough. So let's break that down, right? You want to see them, instead of doing smaller nerfs buffs over the months, you want to see them say, here's our new class. So they did announce the new class. They didn't give us gameplay about it, so that was something that they did not provide you that you would have liked to see. They did mention right in the beginning, before they went into that itemization is their focus at the moment, and they are trying to work upon the gear. Now, keep in mind that they only have about a 10-15 minute slot in which this is basically a promo reel for them in the beginning. We do get a campfire chat that is your multi-hour breakdown of what we've just heard about. So we're probably not going to get all the details to what you're looking into for Diablo in particular, or really any game in particular, during the opening ceremony promotions, because at this point, they're effectively just talking about the highlights of what is to come. A new class is coming, an expansion is coming, you're getting malignant rings in the game, there's a new boss, there's leaderboards. They had to speed run through that, and they also did mention the points you were talking about here, just probably not in the detail you would have liked to see. So in order to get that information, I'd probably point you towards the campfire chat. When is the campfire chat? Let me see if I can find that for you here. That is going to be 2:30 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. You can find this on this live stream. I'll be live during that time, so we will cover it. BlizzCon is also tomorrow. It's over the next 2 days, so I'll be covering all of BlizzCon over the next 2 days on the live stream. So tomorrow's the deep dive for D4. Tomorrow we should get the full campfire chat, which if you were unsatisfied with the amount of information provided today, then tomorrow would be the day for that. What is the new class? Well, they didn't say the name. It's alluded to that some kind of witch doctor-like a thing, just by the nature of the fact we're in a jungle and they had like the mask and all that. However, the leaks itself say that that it's called Spirit Born, which is a nature-based class, and the leaks got everything else about this announcement correct.